Picture this. It's 3 in the morning and you're staring at a screen that's been blank for hours. Your eyes burn from the blue light, your mind races with self-doubt. And somewhere in the depths of your chest, you feel that familiar weight. Pressing down the weight of expectation, of algorithms, of endless comparison to others who seem to create effortlessly, while you struggle to find your next idea. We're not alone in this darkness. Every creator, every artist, every person who dares to bring something new into this world has stood in this exact spot, wondering if they have anything left to give. But what if I told you that over 2,000 years ago, a Roman emperor sat in his tent on the Germanic frontier, writing by candlelight, wrestling with the same fundamental questions about purpose, persistence, and the nature of meaningful work? Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the known world, faced his own creative struggles, not with content creation, but with the eternal human challenge of creating meaning from chaos, of maintaining clarity when overwhelmed, of continuing to serve when exhaustion threatens to consume everything you've built. The Stoic philosophers understood something profound about the human condition that speaks directly to the modern creator's struggle. They recognized that our greatest battles are not fought against external forces, not against algorithms or critics or competitors, but within the chambers of our own minds. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and became one of history's most influential teachers, knew that true freedom comes not from external circumstances, but from understanding what lies within our control and what does not. Seneca, juggling the demands of politics, business, and philosophy, discovered that productivity without wisdom leads only to elegant exhaustion. When you create content, are engaged in something far more profound than the culture often acknowledges. You are taking the raw material of human experience, your thoughts, observations, struggles, and insights, and transforming them into something that can reach across time and space to touch another human soul. This is alchemy of the highest order, and like all transformative processes, it demands everything from you. But here lies the trap that ensnares so many creators: the belief that this giving must be total, that creativity requires you to burn yourself as fuel for your work. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is this more evident than in the creator's relationship with their work.
How many hours have you lost to anxiety about metrics that haven't materialized?
How much energy have you expended worrying about criticism that hasn't come? Or worse, criticism that has come and lodged itself in your mind like a splinter, growing more painful with each passing thought. The emperor who commanded legions understood that the mind, left unguarded, becomes a battlefield where our worst enemies wear our own faces. The path of the Stoic creator begins with a fundamental shift in perspective, a recognition that the creative process itself is where the value lies, not in the external validation that may or may not follow. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius on the art of living, he emphasized that wisdom comes from focusing our energy on what we can directly influence. For the creator, this means pouring your soul into the quality of your work, the authenticity of your voice, the depth of your research, the care with which you craft each sentence, each frame, each melody, the response of the world, the views, the likes, the shares, the criticism. These exist in the realm beyond your control. And to tie your sense of worth to these external metrics is to build your creative life on shifting sand. But let us be honest about what this means. To focus on the process rather than the outcome is not to become indifferent to success. The Stoics were not advocates of mediocrity or resignation. Epictetus ran one of the most sought-after schools in ancient Rome. Seneca was one of the wealthiest and most influential men of his time. Marcus Aurelius managed an empire that spanned continents. They achieved greatness precisely because they understood the relationship between effort and attachment. They worked with total dedication while holding their achievements lightly, knowing that external success, while pleasant, is not the source of their deepest satisfaction. Consider the moment when you first began creating content. What drove you then? Beneath the layers of analytics, anxiety, and algorithm optimization, beneath the pressure to maintain consistency and grow your audience? There was likely something pure, a desire to share something meaningful, to connect with others, to express a part of yourself that couldn't find voice any other way. This original impulse, this creative spark, is what Seneca would call your ruling faculty, the core of who you are as a creator. Burnout occurs when we lose touch with this center, when the external demands of content creation eclipse the internal motivation that made us creators in the first place. The Stoic practice of morning reflection can transform your relationship with your creative work. Marcus Aurelius began each day by reminding himself of his fundamental purpose, not as emperor, but as a human being committed to virtue and service. As a creator, you might begin each day by reconnecting with your why not, your analytics goals or your growth targets, but your deeper purpose. What truth are you trying to illuminate? What beauty are you trying to bring into the world? Problem are you trying to solve for your audience? Ground your daily creative work in this larger purpose. The inevitable frustrations and setbacks become temporary weather patterns rather than existential crises. Epictetus taught his students about the discipline of perception, the practice of seeing things as they truly are, rather than as our fears and desires paint them. In the world of content creation, this might mean recognizing that a video with low engagement is simply data, not a reflection of your worth as a person. It might mean understanding that criticism, even harsh criticism, is information about how your message landed with one particular person at one particular moment, not a final judgment on your creative abilities. When you can perceive setbacks clearly, without the distortion of ego or catastrophic thinking, you can respond to them skillfully rather than reactively. The ancient Stoics understood that resilience is not about avoiding difficulty, but about developing the capacity to move through difficulty with grace. Every successful creator will face periods of low inspiration, harsh feedback, technical failures, and creative blocks. These are not signs that you're doing something wrong, they are the natural terrain of the creative life. Marcus Aurelius faced plagues, wars, and political upheavals, yet he continued to write, to lead, to create meaning from chaos. He did this not by avoiding difficulty, but by meeting it with what the Stoics called the discipline of action, taking appropriate steps based on clear thinking rather than emotional reaction. When you feel the first symptoms of burnout creeping, in the dread when you think about your next project, the sense that you're repeating yourself, the exhaustion that sleep doesn't cure, this is not a signal to push harder. It is a signal to return to Stoic principles. First, examine your expectations. Are you demanding from yourself a level of consistent output that no human could reasonably maintain? Are you measuring your success against creators who may have different resources, different circumstances, different natural abilities? Seneca reminded his readers that comparison is the thief of joy, and in the age of social media, this wisdom is more relevant than ever. Second, reconnect with your sense of cosmic perspective. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on the vastness of time and space, not to diminish the importance of human action, but to right-size our daily anxieties, your recurrent creative block, your disappointing engagement numbers, your critical comments. These are real challenges, but they are temporary. Challenges within the larger scope of your creative journey. When you can see your current struggles as one chapter in a longer story, you can address them with the patience and strategic thinking they deserve. Rather than the panic they often provoke, the Stoic creator learns to find what Seneca called tranquility even in the midst of intense creative work. This doesn't mean becoming lazy or indifferent. It means developing the capacity to work with focused intensity while maintaining inner calm. When you sit down to write, to film, to edit, to brainstorm, you bring your full attention and effort to the task, but you don't carry the weight of all possible outcomes on your shoulders. You trust that good work done consistently over time will find its audience and create its impact, even if not in the ways you initially imagined. One of the most revolutionary aspects of Stoic philosophy for creators is its teaching on detachment from results. This doesn't mean not caring about quality or impact. It means recognizing that once you've released your work into the world, its journey is no longer entirely yours to control. A video you spend weeks perfecting might receive little attention. While something you create quickly and almost casually might resonate deeply with thousands of people, this unpredictability is not a bug in the system of creative work, it's a feature. It's what keeps creativity alive, mysterious, and worth pursuing. Epictetus taught his students to say at the beginning of any undertaking, "This may not go as I hope, and that's perfectly fine." As a creator, you might approach each project with this same spiritful effort, light attachment. You pour everything you have into the research, the planning, the execution, the editing. But once it's complete and shared, you let it go. You celebrate its successes without letting them. Inflate your ego, and you learn from its shortcomings without letting them deflate your spirit. The discipline of desire, another core Stoic practice, teaches us to want what we have rather than constantly reaching for what we lack. In content creation, this might mean appreciating your current audience rather than fixating on the audience you wish you had. It might mean finding satisfaction in your current level of skill while still working to improve. The creator who can find genuine gratitude for where they are right now, for the privilege of having an audience at all, for the technology that makes their work possible, for the freedom to express their ideas, this creator has access to a source of creative energy that external circumstances cannot touch. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. For creators, this wisdom translates into the recognition that your creative fulfillment comes not from reaching some external milestone, a certain number of subscribers, a particular level of income, recognition from specific people, but from the quality of attention and care you bring to your work each day. The creator who writes with full presence is fulfilled in the act of writing, regardless of who reads it. The filmmaker who approaches each shot with craftsmanship and intention finds satisfaction in the process, independent of how many people watch the final product. This doesn't mean becoming complacent or lowering your standards. The Stoics believed in excellence, in pushing yourself to develop your capabilities as fully as possible. But they located the source of this drive internally rather than externally. You work to improve your writing not because you need to impress anyone, but because clear expression is a form of virtue. You study your craft not because you have to compete with others, but because mastery is intrinsically valuable. This internal motivation is sustainable in a way that external validation never can be. When you create from this centered place, your work naturally becomes more authentic, more compelling, more useful to your audience. People can sense when someone is speaking from genuine insight versus when they're performing for approval. The creator who has done the inner work of Stoicism, who has clarified their values, accepted what they cannot control, and committed to excellence for its own sake, this creator has access to a kind of authority and authenticity that no amount of marketing technique can manufacture. Seneca observed that every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. In the context of content creation, this wisdom suggests that creative blocks, failed projects, and periods of low motivation are not signs of ending, but rather the composting that feeds new growth. The video that doesn't perform well teaches you something about your audience or your approach. It's a project that excites no one, reveals something about market reality that helps you adjust your strategy. The period when you feel uninspired forces you to dig deeper, to find new sources of material. To evolve your perspective, the Stoic creator learns to see these apparent setbacks as necessary parts of the creative ecosystem, just as a farmer doesn't panic when winter comes, knowing that dormant periods are essential for future growth. The wise creator doesn't interpret temporary difficulties as permanent failures. You use slow periods to study your craft more deeply, to read widely, to have conversations that spark new ideas. You use criticism to refine your message and improve your communication skills. You use success to understand what resonates with your audience while remaining humble enough to know that success today doesn't guarantee success tomorrow. This perspective transforms the entire experience of being a creator. Instead of riding an exhausting emotional roller coaster tied to external metrics, you develop what Marcus Aurelius called an inner citadel, a core of calm confidence that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. From this stable, Center, you can take appropriate action. You can celebrate successes without becoming attached to them. You can learn from failures without becoming defeated by them. You can engage with feedback constructively without losing your center. The practice of evening reflection, another Stoic discipline, can be particularly powerful for creators. Each night, instead of scrolling through analytics or comparing yourself to other creators, you might spend a few minutes reviewing the day with honest clarity. What did you do well in your creative work today? Or did you let external pressures distract you from your deeper purpose? What did you learn that can inform tomorrow's efforts? This practice helps you maintain perspective on your long-term creative journey while staying grounded in the reality of daily practice. Epictetus reminds us that we are actors in a play, and our job is not to choose our role, but to play it excellently. Your role as a creator comes with certain givens: your natural talents, your current resources, your life circumstances, the particular historical moment in which you're working. Some creators have technical advantages, financial resources, or natural charisma that you may lack. Other creators face obstacles that you've been fortunate to avoid. The Stoic approach is not to waste energy resenting these differences, but to play your particular creative role as skillfully and authentically as possible. This means working with your actual circumstances rather than the circumstances you wish you had. If you're creating content while working a full-time job, your creative process will necessarily look different from someone who creates full-time. If you're just starting and have a small audience, your metrics will look different from established creators. If you're working with limited equipment or budget, your production values may differ from creators with more resources. Creator doesn't use these differences as excuses for inferior work. They use them as creative constraints that can spark innovation and authenticity. Some of the most compelling content comes from creators who've learned to work skillfully within limitations. The constraint of a small budget forces you to be more creative with storytelling. The constraint of limited time pushes you to be more focused and efficient. The constraint of a small audience allows you to be more experimental and personal. When you stop seeing constraints as problems and start seeing them as creative challenges, your relationship with the entire creative process transforms. The Stoic practice of negative visualization, imagining loss, in order to appreciate what you currently have, can be particularly valuable for creators struggling with burnout. Imagine losing your current audience, your equipment, your platform, even your ability to create in your preferred medium. How would you adapt? What would you miss most? What aspects of your current creative situation would you fight to rebuild first? This exercise isn't meant to create anxiety, but to cultivate gratitude for your present circumstances and clarity about what truly matters in your creative work. When you can genuinely appreciate having any audience at all, any platform to share your work, any opportunity to express your ideas, you're accessing the same source of strength that allowed Marcus Aurelius to find meaning in his demanding role as emperor. You're not taking your creative opportunities for granted, but you're also not clinging to them so tightly that the fear of losing them paralyzes your ability to take creative risks. The Stoics taught that virtue is the only true good, that external things like fame, wealth, and recognition are indifferent, neither inherently good nor bad. For creators, this wisdom suggests that the true value of your work lies not in its reception, but in the virtues it cultivates and expresses. Does your content creation practice make you more disciplined, more curious, more skilled at communication, more understanding of different perspectives, or committed to truth and beauty? These internal developments are the real fruits of creative work, and unlike external metrics, they can never be taken from you. This doesn't mean being cavalier about the business aspects of content creation. If you're trying to make a living from your creative work, audience growth and engagement matter practically. But the Stoic creator keeps these practical considerations in proper perspective. You work intelligently to understand your audience and serve them well, but you don't sacrifice your creative integrity or your mental health on the altar of optimization. You study what works and what doesn't, but you remain rooted in your deeper purpose rather than becoming a slave to algorithmic demands. Seneca wrote extensively about the proper use of time, recognizing it as our most precious and non-renewable resource. For creators, This wisdom translates into being intentional about how you spend your creative energy. Are you using your time to create work that matters to you, or are you constantly reacting to external pressures and demands? You investing in developing skills that will serve your long-term creative goals? Or are you caught in busy work that feels productive but doesn't actually move you forward? The Stoic creator learns to protect their time and attention as carefully as they would protect any valuable resource. This might mean setting boundaries around when and how you engage with social media. It might mean saying no to opportunities that don't align with your deeper creative vision, even if they seem prestigious or lucrative. It might mean dedicating specific times to deep creative work, free from the distractions of notifications and analytics checking. When you approach time with this level of intentionality, you naturally become more focused and productive. But, more importantly, you begin to experience your creative work as a series of conscious choices, rather than a series of reactions to external demands. This sense of agency is crucial for preventing burnout and maintaining long-term creative satisfaction. Marcus Aurelius frequently meditated on the interconnectedness of all things. Recognizing that his actions as emperor rippled out to affect countless other lives. As a creator, your work also exists within this web of connection. Your video might provide exactly the insight someone needs at a crucial moment in their life. Your article might introduce a reader to an idea that changes their perspective. Your art might offer beauty to someone going through a difficult time. You may never know the full extent of your creative impact, but trusting in this broader purpose can sustain you through periods when the immediate feedback is discouraging. This understanding transforms your relationship with consistency and persistence. You keep creating not because you have to maintain an arbitrary posting schedule, but because you recognize that your creative work serves a larger purpose beyond your personal satisfaction. Someone, somewhere, needs to encounter what you have to offer. Your job is not to guarantee that this connection happens on your timeline, but to ensure that when the right person is ready for your message, your work is there waiting for them. The Stoic virtue of justice reminds us that our individual excellence serves the common good. As a creator, this means taking responsibility for the quality and integrity of what you put into the world. In an attention economy that often rewards sensationalism and superficiality, choosing to create thoughtful, honest, well-researched content is an act of service to your audience and to the broader cultural conversation. This commitment to quality over quantity, depth over viral appeal, authenticity over optimization, is simultaneously the most challenging and most sustainable approach to content creation. It's challenging because it requires patience, discipline, and the willingness to sometimes swim against the current of what seems to work for others. It's sustainable because it's rooted in values that don't change with algorithmic updates or cultural trends. When you commit to this path, you're not just building an audience, you're building a body of work that you can be proud of regardless of its immediate reception. You're developing skills and insights that compound over time. You're creating something that reflects the best of who you are rather than simply what gets the most engagement. The journey of the Stoic creator is not about eliminating challenge or struggle from the creative process. It's about transforming your relationship with these inevitable difficulties so that they become sources of strength rather than sources of burnout. When you can meet a creative block with curiosity instead of panic, when you can receive criticism as information rather than attack, when you can experience slow growth as patience rather than failure, you've developed the psychological resilience that makes long-term creative work sustainable. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. Like any skill, it requires consistent practice. Some days you'll successfully embody Stoic principles in your creative work. Other days you'll find yourself caught in old patterns of anxiety, comparison, and attachment to outcomes. This inconsistency is normal and expected. The key is to return to your practice again and again. With the same patience and compassion you would show a student learning any complex skill. Remember that Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not as a finished philosophy, but as ongoing exercises in living according to Stoic principles. Even as emperor, even as one of history's great philosophical minds, He struggled daily with the same human tendencies toward worry, distraction, and emotional reactivity that you experience. The power of Stoicism lies not in achieving some state of perfect equanimity, but in having practical tools for returning to your center when life inevitably pulls you off balance. Your creative work is one of the primary arenas where you practice these Stoic virtues. Each time you sit down to create, you have an opportunity to exercise discipline, wisdom, courage, and justice. Each time you face a creative challenge, you have a chance to strengthen your character along with your craft. Each time you share your work with the world, you practice the art of acting with full commitment while holding outcomes lightly. The path of the Stoic creator is ultimately about integration, bringing together the practical demands of building an audience and creating good work with the deeper spiritual practice of living according to wisdom. It's about recognizing that your creative work is not separate from your character development, but rather one of its primary expressions. When you approach content creation from this integrated perspective, burnout becomes much less likely because your creative work is no longer draining your energy, it's cultivating it.
Yes.
As you continue on your creative journey, remember that you are part of a long tradition of people who have chosen to share their insights, skills, and perspectives with the world. This tradition includes not only other content creators, but artists, writers, teachers, and thinkers throughout history who have faced similar challenges of staying motivated, handling criticism, and maintaining creative integrity in the face of external pressures. The Stoic philosophers offer you tested wisdom for this journey. Their insights have helped people maintain clarity and purpose through wars, political upheavals, personal losses, and all manner of external difficulties. The challenges of content creation, while real and sometimes intense, are well within the scope of what Stoic wisdom can address. Trust in these principles, practice them consistently, and watch as your relationship with creative work transforms from a source of anxiety and exhaustion into a source of growth, service, and sustainable satisfaction. Your audience needs what you have to offer, but they need it from the best version of yourself, not from a burned-out, anxious creator trying to manufacture inspiration through force of will, but from someone who has learned to access their creativity from a place of inner strength and clarity. The work you do on yourself, the time you invest in developing Stoic wisdom, this is not separate from your creative work, is the foundation that makes your creative work sustainable, authentic, and ultimately more valuable to everyone it touches. The screen may be blank at 3 a.m, but you are not empty. You have within you everything necessary to create meaningful work and share it with the world. The path forward lies not in pushing harder, but in returning to wisdom and remembering what you can control and what you cannot. In reconnecting with your deeper purpose, in trusting the process while releasing attachment to outcomes, is the way of the Stoic creator, and it leads not to burnout, but to a kind of creative fulfillment that external circumstances cannot diminish.